Yo, this is the Ferry. This is a continuation of the podcast series that Dr. Ed and I have been doing, and we are starting to invite a few guests. We recently had Cliff Gray on. That was a really cool discussion around Western bow hunting. This one is a two-parter because we went 3.5 hours, and that's a long time. So we have Jim Aken today. Jim Aken was the first person to kill legally a hippo with a crossbow and have it entered. So from that, he wrote a book. And the title of this book is It's All About the Arrows, Engineering Arrows for Enhanced Hunting Performance. And this discussion was originally going to be around crossbows and Mr. Aken's experience, and most of the things he talks about are with a crossbow because he busted his shoulder up before a safari and said, well, I'm going, and couldn't pull a vertical bow. However, for you people who turn your nose up to crossbows, this discussion is hardly about that. It's really about engineering arrows for maximum lethality. This book's incredible. He's got charts and graphs, all kind of good stuff, formulas, charts, etc. Okay, like that. I highly recommend it. It's great reading. In this particular episode, we're going to talk about the hippo, which he got a complete pass-through on. He was figuring it out before he found Ed. That's an interesting anecdote. The man builds his own inserts with his own metal lathe so that they fit, and ended up writing a book about it, and then sort of found Ed and they became friends. So he didn't start with the Ashby reports. He said, well, I want to shoot a hippo. What makes sense? And I think in his own words, my 9th grade class in Newtonian physics came back to me and said, momentum is a thing. So stay tuned here. Like I said, if you're a vertical bow guy and you're a snobby about crossbows, then you can just go away. If you're interested in hearing somebody who's done it, Cape Buffalo, hippo, all the African stuff, North American game and all that good stuff, and engineered his arrows for maximum lethality and enhanced hunting performance, and wrote a book about it, well, this one's for you. Stay tuned.
Okay. I'm being recorded.
You are. So welcome back to the Ranch Fairy Nation. Ed, you and I got to figure out a name for this, like Ashby Ranch or something like that. We're going to have to get some kind of crazy title going, sell t-shirts and all that good stuff, Speedos, whatever it takes. For those of you out there who are in the crossbow game, we're going to talk to Mr. Jim Aken. He's one of Ed's buddies, and he's written a book on crossbows, done a lot of work, studies with them, some of the outcomes that he's had, and pick his brain. I just got a crossbow, Jim, about 4 or 5 months ago, and I'm learning how to play with the thing, and It's been quite an experience. So without further ado, could you introduce yourself to the audience? Because this is a vertical bow, bunch of hillbillies, and they might need an introduction to your fame and fortune.
Okay, well, like you, I got a crossbow and started playing with it. That's kind of my fame and fortune deal there. But no, I was set up to take my compound bow to Africa to go hunting, and I just bought a new house and was doing some modifications on my house before I moved in. So I was out in the garage putting in some lights.
Yep.
And I took a step off the ladder there to step down and step back and admire my handiwork and pat myself on the back. Well, I missed the bottom rung on the ladder there and fell backwards and tore up my shoulder. And so that put me on the schedule for shoulder surgery and took me off the schedule for shooting a bow anymore. So
when was
I
that?
was heartbroken.
When was that?
2004. So I would
Okay.
have been, I was 64 then, I think. Yeah, somewhere in there.
Close enough.
So you've got
Anyway,
20 years of hunting with a crossbow, huh?
so I was an old geezer. Anyway, um, yeah. So I called my guy in Africa, and of course, by the time you're getting ready to go to Africa, you've paid half your hunt fee, you've made reservations on airlines and stuff. So I was several $1,000s into this deal. So I called my guy in Africa, and it's basically whine, 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 poor me, poor me.
Mm-hmm.
What am I gonna do? Oh, poor me. And he said, why don't you just get a crossbow and come on over? And I told him I couldn't pull my bow back, and so anyway, I said, well, can you do that? Because in New Mexico at that time, crossbows weren't legal. And
Yeah.
so he said, yeah, you're hunting on my ranch. You can do whatever I allow. And he said, it's okay with the state and it's okay with me. So come on over. So he recommended a bow for me. And so I went around. I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico here. So I said, I went around and checked every place in town that had bows or bow supplies or anything related to bows.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody told me the same story. No, we don't have any crossbows. They're not legal here, And I spent all day long looking for a crossbow in the entire city of Albuquerque. Drove all the way. I mean, just networked all over the place here. And
So just real quick clarification point. At that time, they were illegal in the state of New Mexico. That's why they
right,
weren't. Okay.
right. There was
Just for
no
my own knowledge.
established.
Yep. So I'm
Yeah,
tracking.
there was nothing allowed just for older hunters. There was nothing allowed for disabled hunters, anything like that. And at that time, and so anyway, I got a recommendation from my guide there or my outfitter in Africa. And he said, there's a guy that came over and had an Excalibur bow, and it was really nice, and he killed everything he pointed it at. So he said, I would start there. So
Yep.
I looked up Excalibur on the internet there, and they were in Canada at the time. And so I called them and told them, can't find any of your bows here. They're illegal in the state, but I'm going to Africa with it. So
Yeah, right.
what can I do? What can I do? So the guy said, well, do you live anywhere near Indiana? And I said, well, I'm as close as a UPS,
Yeah.
And so I talked to him a little bit, and he said, well, we just shipped 5 bows to this guy in Indiana, and they just called me. He said, I just got off the phone with them, and they were loving those things, and they had been out there, and everybody in the whole operation, even the girls in the office, had come out and shot this thing out in the warehouse, and everybody was all excited about it. So he said, that would be a good place for you to start. So I called the guy that he gave me his name, and I called him. And so he said, wow. He says, what timing? He said, I just got off the phone with the guy
Yeah, right.
at Excalibur in Canada. And I said, yeah, I know. He's the one that gave me your name. And he said, he told me that if I called up and told him that I'd talk to you and that you'd give me 50% off. And the guy said, oh, no.
Hey, you don't get anything without asking, right?
Yeah. So I said, well, that was just too good to pass up, So anyway, he told me how they liked it and everything. I said, okay, now the classic story at Christmas, is that you give a kid present and it needs batteries, and you don't give them the batteries. So then they
Right.
have to sit around until, after everything starts opening back up and go get batteries. So I said, I want everything I need to shoot this bow to practice with it and to go out and shoot it.
Yep.
And he said, okay, so you're going to need arrows, you're going to need a rope cocker, you're going to need this and that. And he gave me the list, told him, get after it. Have credit card, will travel. So,
Of course.
so in about 3 to 5 days, here UPS shows up on my doorstep with this box, and I got my crossbow. And so I went out and shot it. It was fantastic, I thought, and at least I could cock it and everything like that. So I went to Africa, and just like the guy said, I shot everything that I pointed that thing at.
Mm-hmm.
Now I was shooting off the shelf stuff. I wasn't experimenting with anything at that point in time. So I shot off the shelf arrows, and I was shooting, I think, 100 grain broadheads on them, and they worked great. But when I got into the bigger stuff, I noticed that I needed a little bit more performance, like for the eland. My arrow didn't go all the way through the eland. Now the little stuff, those arrows were zipping through them.
Mm-hmm.
Even the kudu, it zipped right through it. And I got that on video somewhere.
Do
This
you
arrow
know what
going through a
broadhead
kudu.
you were using on that?
They were a 3-blade thing
I
that
bet you
had
$10 it was a Thunderhead. That was the rage back then. I remember when the Thunderhead came out. It was
That would be my
amazing.
guess.
Thunderhead. No, I think it was like a Muzzy or something.
Probably a Muzzier. Those are the only two that were around back then. I mean, really.
Yeah, there wasn't much selection.
There wasn't a lot of selection. Yeah, I'm that old. I'm not old, but I'm that old.
Well, these things had the replaceable inserts, the little razor blade inserts in them, and you assemble them and then kind of tighten them up there. And so that was good in the aspect of they were sharp out of the box and all that. And but they didn't go all the way through the eland. But I got my eland, so it was not a big deal. And so anyway, that's kind of what started it. And then, of course, when we got done with that, my professional hunter there was all excited about that thing. He thought it was fantastic. Now, both my professional hunter and my outfitter there were into bows since they'd been kids. They were avid bow shooters, and so they recognized the value of that thing.
Right.
And so then, before I got done with that, he said, Jim, we need to go hunt a Cape Buffalo with this. So I thought, well, yeah, we need to do that. That's just something the guys got to do,
Right.
And so I started making arrangements for, we kind of set up a hunt date for a year from, for the next year. And I started looking around, trying to find out what to do about arrows and stuff. And I read an article, and I can't think of the guy's name, but he's pretty famous in the bow hunting circles. You would know him.
Ed Ashby?
Well, yeah, him too. Actually, I read his stuff on the Alaska Bow Hunters, the Grizzly Stick page. They've got a bunch of his reports on there. And I had physics in Physics 101 in college, like in the 70s. And I think in 1970, 69 or 70. Anyway, so I kind of vaguely remembered the stuff from Newton's laws of motion and stuff. So I went back and looked up a bunch of that stuff, and I was thinking I need more power, when it gets out there.
Right.
And then there was an ad on TV that was running about that time here in Albuquerque area. And it was some law firm that was trying to drum up business for suing truck drivers, trucking companies.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, these trucks are big and heavy and they take a long time to stop. And I thought, well, that's Newton's, Newton's deal about momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what he's describing. And so I started looking around and I read this article, and this guy had shot some Cape buffalo with his regular bow, with his vertical bow. And he was talking about 180 grain broadheads. So I went looking for 180 or 200 grain broadheads. And a guy at our local bow shop said that he'd never even heard of a 200 grain broadhead. He'd never heard of anything more than about 140. And what I found was the regular bow shops and stuff are geared up pretty good for deer and for turkey, and in this area for elk, but not much more than that. And so then I read this article, like I said, about this guy shooting at Cape Buffalo, and so I was called my outfitter in Africa and told him the story, and he said, go to get you some what the heck were those things? Grizzly stick. Alaska bow hunters has them now. But
German Kinetics.
German Kinetics.
Yeah, that was a great head when Marcus was making it. Good, very good steel.
They were hard to get because they were coming from Germany, and this guy was making them in Germany. But boy, when I got those, it was like a piece of jewelry, man. Those things were shiny.
I've got a set of the German ones, and they're the scariest sharp broadhead I've ever put my hands on.
Yeah. And so I got those, went over there, and we got a Cape Buffalo with it, and it was very interesting. And of course, wildebeest and everything else that walked in front of it. And so then I needed a little bit more and a little bit more. You know, you have guys they want something a little bigger and a little better. And
right.
So I kept shopping around more and more, and then I ran across these crossbows, and in the advertisements and stuff. About that time, PSE came out with a crossbow that do 400 feet per second, and I was looking at all this stuff, and I couldn't afford the PSE one right at the moment, and so I kept looking, and ran across these bows that I've been using quite a bit, and Chuck Matasik in Pennsylvania is making those, or was then, and anyway,
it became a book. Sounds like
it became a book. Yeah, you can read all about this in my book. But
what's your book? What is the book title of the book?
Oh, the title is it's all about the arrows. And
now give them the full title. I've got it written down here, so I know it's all about the arrows, engineering arrows for enhanced hunting performance.
Right.
And I'll plug you. That's available from you at Jim_Aken at hotmail.com.
Thank you. And
well, I want it out there because that's the best book on crossbow hunting that I have seen.
Well, during this quest, I could not find anything about the Ashby stuff, just in the general quest I was making at that time. And Chuck Matasik sent me a email and said, would you be willing to talk to Ed Ashby? And I'd seen some of your stuff and read some of your stuff, And so I thought, fantastic. If I get to meet the real guy there, that'd be fantastic. So I responded to that, and that's the way I met Dr. Ed here. And so I started to work more and more with the heavy arrows, the front and center design, and tried to push that to the limit. I got up to, I think, about almost 35% front of center.
Ooh.
And some pretty heavy broadheads and some extra weight in the front. I was making my own inserts, the brass inserts for the broadheads. So I was putting a pretty big brass tail on them. And the only place that you got to go in an arrow to add weight to it is to either make it, externally like a great big wide broadhead or get a great big thick broadhead. But other than that, the only place you got to go is up inside the arrow. And
hey, I'm going to ask you the question that we're going to get on the comment section, which Ed and I'll manage, mostly me, because there's going to be some interesting comments. Never stops.
Oh, yeah.
So you clearly stated that everything you pointed at died on your Africa trip.
Pretty much, yep. I don't think I lost anything.
Why did you keep pressing? What were you trying to solve with the book? I mean, were you seeing something that you wanted to resolve, or because I have a similar kind of background on that stuff. There were some failures I couldn't understand. That's why I'm on the internet. So if everything you pointed a bow at died, why? Other than Cape Buffalo, right?
Well, my first Cape Buffalo.
On that first hunt, why did you want to improve your arrow setup from that first hunt?
Every time I went over there, my outfitter and my PH were impressed with the performance, and things just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so we went from Cape Buffalo, and then it was a hippo. And he said, "We need to go shoot a hippo." I said, "What the hell are you shoot a hippo for?" And he said, "Oh man," he said, "that's this. I think this bow will do it." And I'll let you know. So that was our next step, was to get a hippo with it. And there'd been people that had shot hippos with a vertical bow before, but none.
You're enjoying the video. Here's a little statement from Dr. Ed about the Ashby Bowhunting Foundation. He actually typed it up for me so I'd get it right. The Ashby Bowhunting Foundation conducts independent testing on arrows and broadheads and shares the results with the global bowhunting community free of charge. The foundation does not accept donations from the archery industry, ensuring the testing remains as unbiased as possible. If you appreciate this video, please support the Ashby Bowhunting Foundation with a donation. Your contributions are vital for the research. They are tax deductible. The foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. All of our directors serve voluntarily. 100% of your donation benefits our projects. You can designate your donation to the General Operating Fund, the Youth Education Fund, or both. Visit www.ashbybowhunting.org and help the foundation make an impact on bow hunting for the long term.
Crossbow. So, so I went over and we arranged a hunt, and it was like a year and a half, because he wanted to do the hunt at the tail end of the dry season.
Yeah.
Over there. And so we had to wait for, the timing to be right. Mm-hmm. And the whole deal is during the wet season, those hippos are scattered all over the place. They can get in the water anywhere. And this river that we were going to hunt in has the highest concentration of hippos of any of the rivers in Africa. And that's we we set that up. I started practicing, and I gave Dr. Ed there a list of my performances that, my momentum and kinetic energy and stuff like that on the results of some of my experimentation. And I've got some arrows in there up in 2,000 or 3,000 grains.
What'd you shoot the hippo with?
I shot it with, I think 1250, something like that.
Well, how'd it do?
One of them went through a rib and hit. It went through both ribs, near side and far side, but it didn't go all the way through the far side rib. It was just sticking out a little bit. Mm-hmm. It lodged up in there. The other arrow I got from a slightly different angle, and it went all the way through. And
2 hippos.
No, one hippo, 2 arrows.
Okay, got it.
I shot this thing, and he took off, and he went down the stream and through a pod of hippos, and then he came back to exactly where he was before and stood up again in it. And by that time, of course, I'd recocked and reloaded and was ready to go. So I shot him from just a slightly different angle, and that one didn't hit any ribs. It went all the way through. And that arrow currently resides with the hippos and the crocodiles in the Luwanga River. Because I didn't want to go out and challenge the crocodiles.
Yeah.
for recovery fire. But, there's, it worked fantastic. I mean, I shot this thing, he went down there and was bothering all the other hippos, and came back, stood up again, and challenged this male that had originally started this deal and this challenge fest there. And when I shot him again, I was recocking, and my outfitter said, Jim, there's your hippo. I see him out there. That arrow's out there flying like a flagpole there. Uh-huh. So we went out, and the arrow had gone in and stuck in the offside rib. But when he was thrashing around, it came loose, but because it had gone through a rib, it didn't, it couldn't come back out.
Yeah, it was inside of his chest cavity. They're wide.
Yeah. So it turned or whatever, and so it wasn't coming back out the same orientation it went in. And so anyway, that was the first, when I registered him with SCI, I got this big email there, and they were all excited. That was the first hippo that had ever been registered with a crossbow. And ever been shot with a crossbow. And I thought, well, probably some have been shot with a crossbow before. They just didn't recover them or didn't register them or something. But I was number one. And so that was kind of a big deal. Well, then they're sitting around that evening telling, we shot that hippo 1,000 times that evening. They drank about a half a bottle of whiskey. I don't drink, but everybody else did. So anyway, so then somebody said, well, that's sure a lot better than the last guy that came over, than that guy a couple of weeks ago. And I thought, what? And so they had a guy come with a crossbow a couple of weeks before I was there. And he was with a different PH, but it was the same kind of cohort group there, same outfitter and whatnot. And so they got to telling the story that this guy came over. He was very proud of his crossbow, and it was one of those 400 feet per second things. And he had shot all these deer with it and everything. And so, well, he shot this hippo in the air, it hit and bounced out. And so then, of course, the PHs, the professional hunters, are duty bound to try to put that animal down to recover it. And they can't just say, oh, well, we'll go shoot another one, because their license depends on that.
Right.
Just like a lawyer's license or a CPA's license or medical doctor's license, their license depends on them following the rules of their organization. So they went out, finally found the exact hippo and identified it well and shot it with a rifle.
Hmm.
And so I thought, boy, you're talking about a lose-lose deal. This guy went to Africa, went to the Luangwa River, which you got to fly in on a small airplane to get to this area. And so you're several days in the air, depending on where you're coming from in the United States. And you're probably 10,000 miles of flying time, lots of airport food, lots of airline food. And by the time you get there, it's an exhausting trip, plus a very expensive trip. So this guy spent thousands of dollars, lots of time, lots of effort, and gone home with a hippo that somebody else shot with a rifle.
Yeah, that sucks.
And so I thought, well, that sucks because this guy's disappointed and very disappointed. He spent a bunch of money and he's got a trophy that he can't even register in his own name if he's doing it the right way. And so I thought, well, we don't want that, you know. But anyway, like I said, they were telling this story and about this 400 foot per second deal that hitting and bouncing out, which means it didn't go in past the broadhead, right? It didn't get in deep enough for the broadhead to hang it up even.
Mm-hmm.
And a hippo's hide is very thick. Some places be an inch and a half thick.
No kidding.
No kidding. And for something that spends 20 hours a day in the water, you would think that hide would be soft.
Mm-hmm.
That hide, when I got up there and touched it, it was amazing. That hide's like touching a truck tire. Like if you go up to an 18-wheeler and rub around on the tires, that's what it felt like. I could not believe it. It's hard, tough, and thick. And so anyway, like I said, I experimented for about a year and a half working up those arrows. I got all the way up into the 3,000 grain range, which basically an aluminum arrow with a steel rod down the middle of it, the whole length. And now if you could get within about 8 or 10 yards, man, that thing would have been terrific. But it was like trying to play baseball with a bowling ball, you know?
Yeah.
But when it hit, man, it knocked my little target all over the place when I was shooting at it. But so I had to do this balance between range and the weight that I needed to get through this huge animal. And so that's what I did for a year and a half was build arrows and shoot them.
So you freelanced all this stuff, right? You had kind of pieces of information, a few stories.
You're
kind of guessing. It's kind of like Ed's rhino story. Yes, I'm going rhino hunting, and I'll build an arrow. And here we go. It's going to be great.
Exactly. And it truly was. So one of the reasons that you write books is to get knowledge out into the community and to share something that you've done, an experiment you've done or a career that you've had or whatever. Absolutely. And share your accumulated knowledge with people and, you know, so that they don't have to go find it like you did, right?
Right.
Or accumulate it over a 40 or 50 year span. And you can imagine, for instance, if everybody went out and did their front of center experimentation like Dr. Ed has done, there wouldn't be any of that information available if you had to depend on that. So him writing all this stuff, which I eventually tracked down and actually built on all of his writings there, is what I built on to design all my arrows. And other than that, after that first trip, I was using off the shelf stuff on that first trip, and I was already seeing that it was inadequate for what I wanted to do. And so that was one of the reasons that I wrote the book, was disperse that knowledge. Same reason that Dr. Ed's published his writings there, and get that knowledge out for other people. And then as I was writing this stuff, I identified 3 basic populations that would be interested in this. One would be somebody that just wants to read hunting stories. So I tried to write each one of the stories in the book as a standalone hunting story, kind of reminiscent of the days, with Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom and all that stuff. So I tried to write it so that somebody could go in there and read this and find it interesting and entertaining. And so there's good stories in there. Then the next population is people that want to develop their arrows and try to design an arrow for a certain specific animal or whatever. But they don't really want to get knee deep or waist deep in the math of it. So I've got charts and tables and stuff in there. So if you know your weight and your velocity, which are all the basic components of Newton's laws of motion, every one of Newton's formulas, you need weight and velocity somewhere in that formula. And so I included those tables so that if you know how much your arrow weighs, which you can get that with fairly cheap electronic scale, and you know how fast it's going. And here again, nowadays, chronographs are just slightly over $100, and they're very accurate. So that's achievable for most people. And if not, you can go to your local archery shop, and they probably got one there set up and using it. So you don't even have to buy your own. And then the other thing is, of course, if somebody really wants to get waist deep in the math, I've got all the formulas and stuff there, and explain how, in the book, I explain how to work those formulas. I've got a section on just the process of going through working those formulas.
One of the challenges that Ed and I've started pushing really hard is I stopped talking about KE.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy thing to do because you're trying to unravel the whole industry, both the crossbow and the vertical bow. Anything flying, even the bullet guys don't talk about the
bullet guys too.
It's
Yeah,
all kinetic energy. And I don't know where that got. Maybe y'all know why you think, because I'm 55, so generation behind you. But I was aluminum. I mean, back when I started bow hunting, we were shooting 600 grain arrows and didn't know it.
Yeah.
The 2117 with feathers on it and a freaking Bear razor head weighed 600. I promise you. I need to go get one and weigh it. But we didn't leave arrows and stuff ever.
Yeah.
We had no penetration issues. We didn't think it was ever going to literally, we never got the arrow. They were not in the deer. We just said you shoot them and it goes through them. And those bows were slower than Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
200 feet per second was like a magic poo number back when I was shooting. 220 was, oh, wow, Well,
most of the time back in the days of me and of course, Ed, you didn't have chronographs.
Yeah, we didn't know.
That's only something that they had at a big corporation or something, because it would have cost you $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to buy a chronograph back then, and it was unattainable for most people. So,
why do y'all think momentum isn't discussed and KE is such a hot topic?
It's a carryover from rifles.
You think so?
Use that for forever.
Yeah.
And people were used to talking about KE, and it's not really important there. Before we go down rabbit holes, I'll talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
But carry on, Jim.
Well, just my personal opinion is it's a real big number and it looks really keen. So it's good for the marketing guys.
Yeah.
Just like feet per second on your bow, I mean, everybody was chasing the 400 foot per second bow just a few years ago. Now, Raven's got a 500 foot per second bow. So everybody's trying to get to that. And it's a big number, and, it's easy to calculate, and it's impressive. So, but momentum is what you really want.
Yeah.
And you'll notice also in my book that I don't list the animals so much by their classification and their family and genus and stuff but I list them by the
call from unknown name.
Ed's getting the call. Hey, for all you millennials, this is how we used to do it in the old days. We just didn't answer the damn thing.
That's what I'm doing. That's all I got to
We looked at it and went, God, that might mean we have to do something. No, leave that. Crap, I'm not answering. That's exactly what we did in the old days.
Okay, so
go ahead.
Back to me again. Or,
Ed, start the rabbit hole.
Well, before we go down the rabbit hole, I wanted to point out one real interesting thing about hippo hide. He talked about how thick and hard it is. If you take a big slab of hippo hide, salt it, and dry it with a board and a heavy weight on it so that it's flat, you can take that once it's dried, put legs on it, polish the top of it, and lacquer it, and it looks like a slab of marble. And you can make a beautiful coffee table out of them.
I never thought about making a coffee table out of my hippos.
It makes it absolutely gorgeous, and looking at it, you would swear it's a slab of marble. It is that tough and hard once it's dried.
Wow.
And it's still dried. It's still an inch thick.
Yeah.
That gives you an idea how tough that hide is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
go ahead.
I inquired into using it or mounting that thing, and everybody told me, "Oh no, you don't use the hide. They have fiberglass forms, and they just paint it to." You show them some pictures of the hippo that you got, and they'll paint it up and make it look like your hippo.
Well,
and
the other thing that you can do with hippo hide, and it is done commercially where you're doing hippo culls, they can shave that down to a thin leather, just the outer skin, the epidermis,
right,
and tan it. And it makes an incredibly tough yet soft and supple leather. And a lot of really expensive boots are made from hippo hide. And other
pair of hippo flip-flops.
Yeah. The natives do use them for the native sandals for soles. The other thing they use it in lieu of hippo hide are car tires.
Yeah, I saw that when I was there. I saw the car tire flip-flops, but not the. I want hippo hide flip-flops. I got to get somebody to hook me up on that. Talk to Rob.
Yeah, well, you notice he said that they could make really nice boots, cowboy boots, whatever, out of them, and they're very expensive. Well, that expense part, yeah, you could do all that stuff, but wait until you see the price tag on it. Like,
that's why
$8,000 set of flip-flops.
Yeah. So
okay.
Now,
go ahead.
The natives, of course, do that, and it doesn't cost them anything because they're supplying all the labor and everything. But for me to come back and have a full mount for a hippo, first of all, would have taken up a room about the size of my living room.
Yep.
And you wouldn't have been able to do much else in that room except walk around it. And then, of course, it would have probably cost just about as much as the house that you had that living room in. So,
yeah. If you're going to mount a hippo head, you better have a trophy room with a 16-foot ceiling.
yeah. And so
I
anyway,
have some full body mounts of hippos.
Yeah.
Well,
I have.
house. Yeah, but they're usually in commercials.
They have
there.
their own room for that. I have seen one trophy room that had additional rooms built around it that were full dioramas. Water hole with a hippo and other aquatic animals, full body mounts.
I don't have the right job, apparently.
You got to be a multi-millionaire for that, or probably a billionaire now.
All right, Ed, take us down the rabbit hole.
Okay. The first thing before we go down the rabbit hole is I want to dispel that kinetic energy myth. Everybody thinks a crossbow gives you so much energy you can shoot through everything. So I had my artificial intelligence search for the fastest crossbow available currently on the American market. Now, I do understand, I heard from somebody, it might have been from Jim, that in Europe, there's somebody that's developed a crossbow that's not really a crossbow, that's propelled by a hydraulic piston and apparently will achieve close to 900 feet per second. But we don't have that over here. It tells me, the artificial intelligence tells me the fastest crossbow right now is the 10-point Nitro 505, which boasts a speed of 505 feet per second with a 400 grain error.
Okay.
Now that gives you 226 foot-pounds of kinetic energy. Now, for you kinetic energy freaks, that is 18% more than a 32 grain Stinger 22 long rifle. And it's only 70% of a 40 grain CCI Maxi Mag out of the 22 Winchester rimfire Magnum. Now, both of those, their kinetic energy at that level are illegal for hunting white-tailed deer all over North America. So for you energy freaks, there's no crossbow out there that has a energy level that, were it a rifle, would be legal even to hunt white-tailed deer. Now, that's why it's so important that we utilize things like our 12 factors to maximize the conservation of the arrow's force. Now, we're looking at momentum to make up penetration that you don't get with that 22 long rifle or that 22 Winchester rimfire Magnum. So that should dispel kinetic energy myths about how forceful a crossbow is.
Mm-hmm.